Whenever I watch older media, I'm always just a little taken aback by the casual prejudice that pops in every 15 minutes. People say things like, it was a different time, or they didn't know any better, which, fair enough, But a lot of these movies and shows were released as recently as 10 years ago. Even when rewatching things that I absolutely adored in my childhood, there's always a weird taste left in my mouth when a word that's, now considered a slur or offensively derogatory is said by a main character or one of their goofy friends. But with that being said, it's even more jarring just how much has changed in the past 60 years or so, particularly when it comes to the acceptance of queer people in the West. Basil Darden's neo-noir suspense film starring Dirk Bogarde, Victim, depicts exactly what I'm talking about. Despite being rated PG upon its most recent re-release, when the movie first came out, it was highly controversial and rated X by British censors. Not to mention, it was outright banned in the United States for a time. Though Victim was released when male homosexuality was considered a criminal offense in the UK, the film annihilated previous notions of what queerness in film could look like. While that might not seem particularly radical in a world full of shows like Heartstopper or The Wilds or whatever, the fact of the matter is that the intolerant and prejudiced characters being depicted in a negative light is something that really shook up the British public. Before I get into the specifics of Darden's Victim, I want to set the scene for you. In the UK, it was not until 1861, with the passing of the Offences Against the Person Act, that the death penalty was abolished for acts of male homosexuality. Instead, the punishment was changed to a 10-year prison sentence. The Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1885, however, went a step further. The 1885 law cemented the criminality of male homosexual acts while extending its illegality to one's private affairs, meaning that whether or not a witness was present was irrelevant to prosecution. For example, a letter expressing terms of affection between two men was all that was needed to bring a prosecution. The law ruined lives, including the life of renowned writer Oscar Wilde, who was found guilty of gross indecency in 1895 and subsequently sent to prison for 2 years. Upon his release, bankrupt and shunned by society and his health deteriorating, he went the rest of his life miserably and alone. Everyone from regular people to well-known public figures had to find a way to navigate this heinous law. Now, fast forward to the mid-20th century. Male homosexuality is still decidedly illegal in the United Kingdom, despite the clear faults in the existing law. Arrests and prosecutions for male homosexuality were at an all-time high upon the end of the Second World War, and people in power were beginning to fear the possibility of homosexual political leaders being blackmailed into giving up state secrets to the Soviets. The paranoia held by these authorities was made worse by the realization that 2 of the Cambridge Five, a ring of spies who passed information to the Soviet Union during the Second World War, were gay, as well as the conviction of Alan Turing for, again, gross indecency. Such events among notable figures as well as other leaders motivated the Conservative government to create a committee under Sir John Wolfenden to interrogate the laws surrounding male homosexuality. In accordance with the widespread paranoia among authorities, the report was based on interviews with gay men who were willing to give evidence of the invasiveness and harm created by the law. As a result, the committee published its report in September of 1957, recommending that homosexual behavior between consenting adults in private should no longer be considered a criminal offense. The report reflected Wolfenden's belief that the law's role was to protect the public, not interfere with their private affairs, as he wrote, quote, "There must remain a realm of private morality and immorality which is, in brief and crude terms, not the law's business," end quote. Despite the partial support for the report's recommendations relating to homosexuality to be reconsidered for implementation into law from important figures, the government would not take the report's recommendations into account for another 10 years, as they feared it was too radical when compared to public opinion. In that time, Darden's Victim was released. It's not hard to imagine how such a law could be manipulated by blackmailers. In fact, the legislation was so ambiguously worded that it became known as the Blackmailer's Charter. This serves as the basic premise of Victim, as the viewer follows Melville Farr's life as a preeminent city lawyer. It seems as though Mr. Farr has it all, everything from a loving wife waiting for him at home to a thriving legal practice. His wildly successful picture-perfect life is heavily contrasted by Jack Barrett's blackmail-motivated frenzy to escape the authorities by getting out of London as fast as he conceivably can. While the policemen attempt to track Jack down, the young man ardently tries to reach Mr. Farr, only to be turned down and threatened with police action by Melville. Soon enough, it is revealed that Jack is not only trying to escape the police for drawing the salaries of 5 fictitious workmen, but he's also fleeing from blackmailers using his sexuality as a way to get money out of him. As Jack continues to try to get into contact with Mr. Farr to no avail, he approaches several of his friends, including Eddie Stone, Mr. Doe, Phipp, and Frank, for help. Unfortunately, none of them have the time or the means to help him. Still, his interaction with Frank seems to stand out, as Jack runs into his friend when he's with his girlfriend, Sylvie. She, unlike Frank, is a lot less tolerant of Jack and, as she put it, his own sort. Even when they are on their own without Jack, Sylvie expresses her irritation at Frank's willingness to wire Jack 20 quid to help him get down to the coast. The subtle condemnation of intolerance may seem minute, but in the context of the film, it's historic. Eventually, the authorities track Jack down into a diner, and before he's taken in to be questioned, Jack messily attempts to get rid of his scrapbook, as it would reveal the reason he was being blackmailed in the first place. The police question him, but Jack gets moved into a cell for the night when they can't get any information out of him. The policemen get access to the scrapbook that he clearly failed at destroying. The book is filled with images related to Mr. Farr and his career, and it becomes explicitly apparent to the viewer that Melville is hiding something that has the potential to shatter his picture-perfect life. The police move to contact the lawyer, and he tells them that Jack was merely a worker he would run into now and again. Though the officers don't seem thoroughly convinced by his story, their skepticism takes a back seat following Jack's lethal decision.
Can I see Barrett? I'd like to talk to him.
That's not possible, sir. Barrett hanged himself in his cell this afternoon. He's dead.
The shame and fear of being found out overwhelm him, and by the morning, Jack's taken his own life in police custody. It is here that the film takes a profoundly sympathetic approach, for the time, to the gay characters and treats them as what they are: people.
He's right. This blackmailer as good as murdered Barrett. I warned him before he does any more damage. Did Farr recognize him downstairs?
No, sir.
Nevertheless, whatever the blackmailer had on Barrett concerned Farr. Of that I'm certain.
But Mr. Farr's married, sir.
Those are famous last words, Bridie. He took Barrett into his car.
No harm in giving the boy a lift.
Maybe not. It's the subsequent lifts that worry me. Check on Barrett's background, find out if they're in relations, and tell Sergeant Hoy to get out his Sunday suit.
Very good, sir.
If only these unfortunate devils would come to us in the first place.
If only they led normal lives, they wouldn't need to come at all.
If the law punished every abnormality, we'd be kept pretty busy, Sergeant.
Even so, sir, this law was made for a very good reason. If it were changed, other weaknesses would follow.
I can see you're true Puritan, Bridie, huh?
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, sir.
Of course not. But there was a time when that was against the law, you know.
Very good, sir.
In the wake of Jack's tragic death, the policemen bring in Eddie for questioning and ask him about the nature of Jack and Mr. Farr's relationship. Simultaneously, though Melville seemed thoroughly shaken by the news of Jack's death, his application has been accepted by the Lord Chancellor. The deep and unrelenting guilt Melville feels is only made worse when Eddie goes home and finds an envelope addressed to Jack. Inside the piece of mail is a particularly compromising picture of his late friend and Mr. Farr. From there, Eddie finds Mr. Farr and shows him the letter after coming to the conclusion that Jack was using the money to pay the blackmailers to keep quiet about his relations with Mr. Farr.
Mr. Farr?
What do you want?
I want to talk to you.
I only see people by appointment.
I think you ought to see this photograph. That's what boys paying to keep quiet. You and him. I just found it.
You'd better come upstairs.
Melville, motivated by his remorse and feeling of responsibility, begins his attempt to get justice for Jack. Despite the potential for his life to fall apart if he's found out, Mr. Farr, like Mr. Doe, Eddie, and all the other people who knew Jack well, is beyond distraught. Eddie, who's now helping Melville get to the bottom of the surrounding circumstances of Jack's death, goes back to the bar that he, Jack, and the other people around them seem to routinely spend time
Better
in.
go. Let's see.
So long, Eddie.
Yeah, cheers.
I don't know how you can stand them.
Who?
Eddie and Pip and the rest of them. All the same, the whole blooming lot.
I thought they amused you.
Oh, they're good for a laugh, all right. Very witty at times. Generous, too. I hate the bloody guts.
Hey!
Well, don't look at me like that.
They're just not quite normal, dear. What's it matter to you? If they had gammy legs or something, you'd be sorry for them.
Sorry for them? Not me. It's always excuses. Every newspaper you pick up, it's excuses. Environment, too much love as kids, too little love as kids. They can't help it. Part of nature. Well, to my mind, it's the weak, rotten part of nature. And if they ever make it legal, they may as well license every other perversion.
Come on, Mickey, this place is getting boring. Let's go and see what the postman's brought us.
Should be a nice bag today. I think our little efforts might be very well rewarded.
Good day, gentlemen. Good day. Tomorrow, I hope.
Insincere bastard.
Well, what else can you be in this game?
The bar owner, though initially depicted as an impartial or even positive figures in their lives, turns out to be a bigot. What's significant about his prejudice is that the film depicts it as unfounded or even ridiculous in the same way that it treats the religious policeman or Sylvie's bigotry. Though that might seem like the bare minimum in today's context, this small detail is a cornerstone of this activist film. Melville becomes increasingly involved with Jack's blackmailer's other victims. Mr. Farr decides to visit Henry, the owner of a barber shop, who's another homosexual that is being blackmailed. Henry explains his plan to leave the country for Canada, explaining that nature played him a dirty trick in reference to his sexuality. Because of his position, Henry tells Mr. Farr that he'd be the perfect person to state their case because they'd listen to him. Unfortunately, despite Henry's call to action, the blackmailer sees Mr. Farr leaving and confronts Henry about it when the coast is clear. This moment is the beginning of the end of Melville's picture-perfect life, as he is more established on the blackmailer's radar outside of the photo of him and Jack. When he goes home to Mrs. Farr, she seems to be fed up with the air of secrecy that has filled the empty space in their home. She finally decides to ask her husband about the nature of his relationship with Jack, and at first he tries to tell her the same story he told the police before. When she doesn't let up, he tells her everything.
I want to know the truth. I want to know why he hanged himself.
He was being blackmailed.
That's why he stole.
Yes.
Someone found out he was a homosexual and blackmailed him.
That's it.
It takes two to make a reason for blackmail. Were you the other man? Were you? Tell me everything. I want to know.
I don't want you to.
I'd rather know than guess.
You'd been paying for months to stop copies of this going around the temple.
Why is he crying?
I just told him I couldn't see him anymore.
So he knew it was the end. And so did you. Look at the picture. There's as much pain in your face as there is in his. You haven't changed. In spite of our marriage and your inmost feelings, you're still the same. That's why you stopped seeing him. You felt for him what you felt for Stainer.
That's not true.
You were attracted to that boy as a man would be to a girl.
Laura, don't go on. For God's sake, stop now.
I can't stop. I love you too much to stop. I thought you loved me. If you do, what did you feel for him? I have a right to know.
All right, you want to know. I shall tell you. You won't be content until you know, will you? Till you ripped it out of me. I stopped seeing him because I wanted him. Do you understand? Because I wanted him!
As things start to unravel, Mel gets a telegram from the blackmailers telling him to contact his wife, and she tells him that they've graffitied "Farr is queer" in big letters on their garage door. The rest of the telegram is about how, when, and where Mr. Farr should pay the demands. His home life is the first to go, but it will not be long until his professional life follows suit. Motivated by the recent act of vandalism, Farr tells his assistant William about the blackmail. Despite learning Mr. Farr's secret, William doesn't allow his opinion of his employer to be shaken, and it is then that Melville calls the police station and tells them about the blackmailer. They come up with a meticulous plan to have the woman that works in Mr. Doe's shop lead them to the house that the blackmailers operate out of. The rationale for blackmailing the gay men in and around London, outside of financial gain, is a twisted sort of self-righteousness that enables the blackmailer's charter, as the female blackmailer cites her need to make them pay for their filthy blasphemy as her motivation for her crimes. Though the blackmailers have been arrested, in a very similar way, Mr. Farr's fate has been sealed. When they eventually have to go to court, the specifics of the case will inevitably come out, and Melville's life will never be the same. In the last scene of the film, Mr. Farr burns the picture of him and Jack, signifying the end of his leading a double life. Dirk Bogarde, the actor that starred in Victim as Melville Farr, has expressed his unending gratitude at the praise he has received for this role. In 1979, Bogarde called taking this role the wisest decision he ever made in his cinematic life, then writing, "It is extraordinary in this over-permissive age to believe that this modest film could have ever been considered courageous, daring, or dangerous to make. It was, in its time, all three." History proves that the impact of this groundbreaking film cannot be understated, as British politician Lord Arran was one of the countless people who wrote to Bogarde as he introduced the 1967 Sexual Offences Act, a law that finally adopted the recommendations made in the Wolfenden Report 10 years prior. In the letter, Arran expressed his gratitude for the film's aid in creating a climate where discussion surrounding reform was possible. Today, Victim is praised for what it did to exacerbate the decriminalization of male homosexuality in England and Wales, and eventually the entire United Kingdom.